things during Lord Chaitanya's time, or maybe just during the time of Srila Prabhupada, especially before he came to America. But Srila Prabhupada's teachings and previous acharyas, they give us a lot of room for glorifying Krishna and performing our activities. Otherwise, you wouldn't find any ladies involved in governments of this kind, that's for sure. And nor would you find any role of leadership other than serving their husbands, whatever their duties would be. And nor would you see a lot of glorification in other types of music. Or perhaps even language. So today, instead of chanting Jai Radha Madhava, I did this once before, a year or two ago. I can't help it to want to, I was hoping that new girl would be here too, but she's not. Anyway, I got some gifts for her. From our dear friend, Yogindra Prabhu. Sometimes I like to read some of his songs because they go so deep for us poor conditioned souls, as he expresses Krishna Bhakti. Krishna Bhakti sprouting from the depths of Kali Yuga and actually manifesting in our world today. So I'm going to start with, I'm just going to be reading the English lyrics, try to understand that Mogglananda composed these songs. He put them to music. He performs the music and the vocals. And then he produces it and distributes it. Something like Srila Prabhupada did with his books. So this song is called It's All About You. Hippies made folks nervous. We were gypsies with a purpose. We refused to scratch the belly of the beast. We vowed to right the wrong. There was conviction in our song. I believe we were on the road to love and peace, but the best laid plans of mice and men were shattered once again. This old world don't spin on a blind man's point of view. It ain't about me. It's all about you. You're the reason false is false and true is true. You're the reason red is red and blue is blue. It don't matter what I thought I knew. It ain't about me. It's all about you. It seems like the greatest resistance in our struggle for existence comes when darkness steals away our inspiration. It's a young man's demise when the fire leaves his eyes and it seems his dreams are just hallucinations. I've seen folks in that darkest of places. I've seen folks in that darkest of places, and I've misput. I lost the rest of the song. Hold on a moment, I gotta find it. I can't remember it by heart. Okay, so he says,
I've seen people in the darkest places.
it's a young man's demise when fire leaves his eyes, and it seems his dreams are just hallucinations. I've seen folks in that darkest of places. I turned away from the hurt in their faces. Because there are things that a man cannot undo. But this ain't about me. It's all about you. You're the reason false is false and true is true. You're the reason red is red and blue is blue. I could never make an old heart new. But this ain't about me. It's all about you. And then he goes on and he repeats that stanza again. But then the last line is, I can't believe I didn't have a clue. Slowly, it's all coming into view. It ain't about me. It's all about you. I'll do just one more. I mean, a lot of them are really simple melodies, really beautiful actually. But then you've got some that are kind of story-like, something like that one. But this one's like real story-like. It's a whole story that tells you. But again, my thing's out of place, so let me find the second half of it real quick. Let's see. Taking up more time, just finding where things were. Something like Dwi Puja, you know, who after many years he's produced a lot of herbal products. So over the years, Mongol Ananda now has produced a lot of songs, you know, so I've only printed out 2 or 3 of his recordings here. I gotta find this one because it's sort of a nice story. Let's see, maybe that's it. That must be it right there. Yeah, it's pretty long. Okay, here it goes. It's called Turn the Tide. Before 1970, my dad defined reality. He stormed the beaches back in World War II. Then Uncle Sam had Vietnam. I was looking like a sacrificial lamb, one number away from a wasted youth. Oh, I set on my search to find the truth. Mama went to church in a Sunday hat. Jesus was the way. Jesus was the way. That was that. Her chosen path wasn't all that scientific, and my experiments with sense perception only led to self-deception. Truth is such a subtle thing to find, and rarely is it ever found in time. Fred was dead. John was gone. I'd meet those boys before too long, finding what was just beyond that veil. A devil with a tail, an angel in a dress, or a big, fat bunch of emptiness. Maybe I just wander toward the light. Oh, that scary night. The thing I learned, more or less, the nature of pure consciousness, shines upon the mirror of the mind. Turns out my mirror had some dust, a layer of greed and a layer of lust. That looking glass reflected someone else. What I wanted was to get to know myself. I became a Hare Krishna dude with a bald head and an attitude, proclaiming the truth from A to Z. And it's a long road to enlightenment when you're raising kids and paying rent. Though the Mahamantra is always straight and true, it don't mean you won't crash and burn a time or two. I needed realization, transformation, transcendental transportation to carry this pilgrim to the other side. A little goodness, knowledge, and devotion, setting free my true emotion. True emotions. On a wave of mercy I would ride. In the end, only love could turn the tide. The source of this epiphany sat there drenched in irony. It was war that had sent me on my quest. Yet the words from which my heart was healed were spoken on a battlefield. It was there Lord Krishna laid my doubts to rest. At his feet I will turn, at his feet I will face my final test. I'll need realization, transformation, transcendental transportation to carry this pilgrim to the other side. A little goodness, knowledge, and devotion, setting free my true emotions. On a wave of mercy I will ride. In the end, only love will turn the tide. Jai. Yogindra Prabhu ki.
Jai.
So, I'll go on with the Srimad Bhagavatam verse. We're reading from the first canto, chapter 14, Disappearance of Lord Krishna, and it's text number 3. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya.
Narayanam Namaskritya.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Teto Jaya Mudiraye.
Teto Jaya Mudiraye.
Okay, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Joy.
So let's see, just so everybody doesn't get too bored or fall asleep, I need somebody to distribute this Mahaprasadam. Just in case they need a little bit more, you know, help them out, you know. And I brought these gifts here for Caitlin. I was reading that poetry was done by a devotee who writes the lyrics, puts it to music, plays it and sings it, and then produces it and distributes it. So here's 2 of his recordings. And plus a recording, a video done in Talavana by an old friend of ours from Transylvania. And then there's also this sacred Sanskrit music been done with a Western orchestra. So this is for Caitlin.
Is the last one hubbies?
No, it's not hubbies.
Look at her, that I saw it. Evil.
And a new song.
This is for my dear wife to put on her rearview mirror.
Ooh. I thought something quite.
Wow.
And I wanted to know who really likes Sanskrit here. I would have given it to you, Bushai, but Shtika raised his hand first and I saw him first. Here's an Om for you. You can put it on your new refrigerator on Friday. Your new used refrigerator. It sticks to the refrigerator. But for Bushaya, we have a picture of my personal logo of New Talavana.
Which is?
Haribo.
Yogindra.
I had Laurie Felix actually do that on the back of the temple room. So, okay. So, since we're giving things away, anybody would like a lunch bag? Oh, Steve is really How about 2 cookies and a kid's pencil box? Anybody up for that?
Go ahead. Well, that's it.
It's like Mardi Gras. Yeah.
I just want the cookies.
All righty, so let's...
Do you have an easy bake oven?
What about that green car?
That green card, you gotta wait to it. I don't need it anymore.
Not yours, anyway.
I just paid for it.
That doesn't mean anything.
All right, so text number 3, please repeat. Kalashya chagatim raudram. Viprayas, let me, hold on one moment. Viprayas tatu dharminaha. Papiyasim rinam vartam. Kroda loba nitatmanam. Kalasya chagatim raudram. Viparyas tatu dharminaha. Papiyasim ninam vartam. Kroda loba nitatmanam. Kalashya chagatim raudram. Viparyas tatu dharminaha. Papiyasim ninam vartam. Kroda loba nitatmanam.
Kalasya chagatim rodram. Viparyastar to dadina. Papiyasim minam vartam. Kroda loban vitatmanam.
Kalasya chakatim raudram. Viparyastatu dharmana. Papiyasim ninam vartam. Roda loban niritatmana. Kalasya chagatim raudram. Viparyastatu dharmana. Papiyasim nirnam vartam. Roda loban niritatmanam.
कालस्य च गतिं रौद्रम् विपर्यास्तर्तु धर्मिणः पापीयासिं निर्णां वार्ताम् क्रोधलोभानिर्तत्मनाम्
Ladies.
Kalasya Jagatim Rodam Viprayasratudavina Papiyasim Ninam Vartam Rodalovatam Manam
Kalasya Jagatim
Papiyasam Ninam Vartam Rodalopaminatmanam Kalasya Rodam Viparasartudharmina Papiyasim Ninam Vartam
Okay, word to word, English, Sanskrit, and okay, Kalasya of eternal time. Cha also. Gatim direction. Rodram fearful. Viparyasta reverse. Ritu seasonal. Dharminaha regularity. Papiyasim sinful. Nrinam of the human being. Vartam means of livelihood. Krodha anger. Lobha greed. Anita falsehood. Atmana of the people. Translation, I'll just say it and then we can repeat it the second time. He, meaning Maharaj Yudhisthira, saw that the direction of eternal time had changed, and this was very fearful. There were disruptions in the seasonal regularities. People in general had become very greedy, angry, and deceitful. And he saw that they were adopting foul means of livelihood. Please repeat. He saw that the direction of eternal time had changed. And this was very fearful. There were disruptions in the seasonal regularities. The people in general had become very greedy. Angry. And deceitful. And he saw that they were adopting foul means of livelihood. Okay, Srila Prabhupada, Divine Purport. When civilization is disconnected from the loving relation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, symptoms like changes of seasonal regulations, foul means of livelihood, greed, anger, and fraudulence become rampant. The change of seasonal regulation refers to one season's atmosphere becoming manifest in another season. For example, the rainy seasons being transferred to autumn, or the fructification of fruits and flowers from one season in another season. So I guess the rainy season in India is in summer, so in fall it's not. So if it rains in the fall, then that's an irregularity there. But even here, we do the Cow Fest in October because that's the least wet month, documented according to the records for 102 years. So if all of a sudden it starts raining every day in October, it's kind of irregular. Sometimes you have, we've seen flowers bloom early, sometimes late. So that's a little example. A godless man is invariably greedy, angry, and fraudulent. Sometimes not, though. Generally when they have enough money, then there's no real, they're not really being tested so much. Poverty tested everyone. And it takes a lot of godliness and morality not to be greedy then, or to become easily angered or even fraudulent. But, often we see people with money who also exhibit these things. Even though they have plenty, they're still greedy. They can still become quite angry just over some bad, disturbing them for something. Or even fraudulent, even though they may have plenty. Okay, such a man, meaning Prabhupada here is talking about a godless person. Such a person can earn his livelihood by any means, black or white. During the reign of Maharaj Yudhisthira, all the above symptoms were conspicuous by their absence. Maharaj Yudhisthira was astonished to experience a slight change in the godly atmosphere of his kingdom. And at once he suspected the disappearance of the Lord. Foul means of livelihood implies deviation from one's occupational duty. There are prescribed duties for everyone, such as Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Sudra. But anyone who deviates from his prescribed duty and declares another duty to be his own is following a foul and improper duty. So maybe I'll explain that a little bit. Foul means of livelihood implies deviation from one's occupational duty. Certainly, Prabhupada he's using the word foul means of livelihood, which generally implies something like a counterfeiter or someone doing something very fraudulent, a pyramid scheme, a guy who's taking investment money from people and then he's not investing it properly. Instead, he's living off of it, and he's collecting more and sometimes paying a little bit of interest from others from the money he collects, and then he goes to jail after 10, 20, 30 years. Somebody turns him in, they ask for their money, and he doesn't have it. So that's certainly a foul means of livelihood. But here, Srila Prabhupada is also implying that a deviation from one's occupational duty. For example, a person may be really good mercantile guy. You know, he's something like Sam Walton, you know, the founder of Walmart. He was really good at as a merchant. I mean, he would find the lowest price, and he would buy a lot of it, and then he would sell it as cheap as possible, undercutting the competition as much as possible. Now, it's one thing when somebody does that, that's their occupation. By nature, you have people who are born and educated like that, and they're good at it. They can produce wealth for the world. It's another thing when they take that wealth and they start lobbying politicians to make legislation or to actually pass legislation to help cut down the competition. So here you have a person who, you know, he's a merchant or he's a banker, but he gets involved in politics. He's not a person trained in governance. I mean, maybe he doesn't have the quality of a person trained in governance to protect everyone. Instead, he's very self-interested. And he utilizes what he has in order to influence politics. That would be a deviation from one's actual duty in life. Instead, that's why Prabhupada calls it foul. He has an ability to create wealth, but then they turn around and take that wealth to influence politics, which is meant to govern everyone. And they influence politics just to make things better for themselves and their comrades. That would be, in Prabhupada's terms, a deviation of duty. Your duty is to produce wealth for the world so people can have an easier life. But instead you influence politics just so you have an easier life. And people who are lower on the totem pole may have a more difficult life, but after all, it's a rat race, according to many people's philosophy. It's a rat race, and whoever wins, they win. Prabhupada says they all prescribe duties for everyone, and he uses these Sanskrit terms, which, you know, those who have been around for a while understand, those who haven't don't understand. Brahmana referring to intellectual people, teachers, researchers, writers, people like that, you know, people who teach other human beings. And then Kshatriyas are governors, administrators. There are also military people and law enforcement type of people. Statesmen, attorneys, both prosecutors and defense attorneys. Civil and criminal. These are all of a Kshatriya type of nature. Vaishyas, like Sam Walton, somebody who can create wealth. Banking, financing, mercantilism, or farming. I mean, after all, California's vast wealth, much of it is due to farming. They may have like the 6th largest economy. I don't know if I'm right about this, but they may have the 6th largest economy in the world. It's just one state in the United States. They have a new plan that, just like they had these plans for cars before Donald Trump tried to get rid of it. You know, they wanted every car not to put out so much carbon monoxide. So they had these plans for, you know, for all the people that sell cars in California to reach that standard by a certain year. Then, you know, Donald trying to change the regulations around, so California is suing the federal government. So anyway, they come up with the same plan for electricity. They want every house to be generating its own electricity by such and such date with solar panels in the whole state of California. We'll see. Anyway, I got off on that talking about the Vaishya people that can create wealth for the world. And I was mentioning about agriculture, how California derives a lot of its wealth from almonds, from vegetables, from pistachios, from so many types of agricultural produce, and a lot of it was done with irrigation. And what was, sort of deserty type of land. And then we have, the Prabhupada uses the term Sudra. Sudra is the vast majority of people, that those people are meant to be trained in some sort of a livelihood that is very beneficial to human society, like arts and crafts people, like skilled people such as electricians, plumbers, heating and cooling people, whoever they may be, as well as logicians, people who can perform, entertain, act, sing, dance. All these type of people have great benefits in human society. But Prabhupada says, anyone who deviates from his prescribed duty and declares another duty to be his own is following a foul and improper duty. Prabhupada's not speaking about it right now, but an interesting thing about this age where things don't work so regular is that many times people are supposed to be doing their duty on doing their duty. And other people had to step up and do it, even though, because it's an emergency, even though it's not their duty. One famous example of that is there was a Greek ship, maybe a decade or more ago, that one of these cruise ships. And it had gotten into a plight and started taking on water. And it looked like it was obviously going to sink. And as Bushaya can testify, the captain saves everyone and if necessary goes down with the ship. Captain, for lack of words and to use an old slang term, freaked out. He had a family at home. He and his officers snuck off in those kind of lifeboats that they have, not the old type, but the kind that actually zip up so you're not exposed to the elements, and left. And so, there was like panic on the ship. No one knew what to do. So it was actually the musicians, the entertainers on the ship, who were there just playing music for all the people that paid money to go. They took control of things and started helping people get on lifeboats and get out. And then when the Coast Guard came, they had to drop down, some seat to put people in. So something like it was the lead guitarist or somebody, they had to somehow get people in the seat. And he said he felt so inadequate because he had never done this before, and he was just afraid that somebody was going to end up in the water. But there was no one else to do it. So he did it. And they were the last ones to leave the ship. So you can imagine, and the ship, I don't think the ship sank, if I'm not mistaken. It was off the coast of South Africa this happened. So you can imagine the embarrassment when the officers, the captain and the officers got to shore. Of course, they were, prosecuted. I guess he probably lost his license, Anyhow, the point is that sometimes out of an emergency, people have to step up and do the needful. Prabhupada's last few sentences here. A man becomes too greedy for wealth and power when he has no higher objective in life. And when he thinks that this earthly life of a few years is all in all. You can find many, many sentences like this, but I'll just articulate it again, Srila Prabhupada's description of this commonly known phenomenon that many authors have written about. A man becomes too greedy for wealth and power when he has no higher objective in life. obviously he has no interest in helping others. Or maybe in the name of helping others, he becomes greedy for power and wealth. And when he thinks that this earthly life of a few years, Prabhupada doesn't use the word only, but we could throw that in, a few years only, is all in all. Last sentence. Ignorance is the cause for all these anomalies in human society. Now, when Prabhupada uses this word ignorance, he's using that in terms of deviation from the theistic teachings that we find in the world, whether it be the Vedic scriptures, biblical literatures, Islamic literatures, these are all theistic type of literatures. When people ignore those things, when people ignore the order of God, you see, when they deviate from the standards of morality, it's the cause of all these anomalies in human society. And to remove this ignorance, especially in this age of degradation, the powerful sun, yesterday he was speaking about the sun in the purport. When there's the sun, there's no darkness. And he used that in terms of Krishna too. When Krishna was on the earth, there couldn't be any darkness. So Yudhisthira Maharaj started to see anomalies going on, whereas previously these were not there. So he assumed when he saw them starting to happen, Krishna must have left. So again, Prabhupada's using the sun allegorically. He says, especially in this age of degradation, the powerful sun is there to distribute light in the shape of Srimad Bhagavatam. The beautiful story of the personality of Godhead. People didn't have that story before Prabhupada, at least in English. Nor Spanish, Russian, Greek. Only in Indian dialects, was that story available. That was the real gem of India. The Islamic Jihad raped India for 800 years, and the British Raj raped her in another way for 200 years, taking the material wealth. India owned almost 30% of the world economy before the British Raj. So even the Muslims kept the money in India. They controlled it, but they kept it in India because they made their home there. The British took it back to London. And I know we could go on with that, but the real wealth of India wasn't the money. It was the Srimad Bhagavatam, which the world didn't know about until Swami Bhaktivedanta came to New York City in 1965 with his translations. That he wrote, although he knew English, it wasn't his native language. Bengali was his native language, and of course he spoke Hindi. And he spoke English, but still, that wasn't the language he used daily. It was his Guru Maharaj who ordered him to teach in English. So he would write in English, but there were many imperfections. So when Prabhupada came to America, the first engagement he gave to anyone who had an inclination to help him or to be a disciple, and by the arrangement of Providence, he bumped into a person who had a master's degree in English and was teaching at Ohio State. So that person became his editor. So I will reward, again, Kaylin will reward Kaylin. Somebody can get her one of those first cantos of the Bhagavatam with the first 8 chapters off the shelf.
Which one?
And we'll give her that today and derive all the benefit in this wonderful month of Purushottam for giving charity. Yeah, first canto, yeah, that Prabhupada brought here. Prabhupada came, 40 rupees in his pocket, which at that time was about 7 rupees per dollar, and you couldn't exchange it in America because it was like Mexican pesos. You ever try to exchange Mexican pesos? It's something like trying to exchange Confederate money. It doesn't have any value. Maybe among some sort of collector. So what Prabhupada had was a case of these books. And that's how he created the Hare Krishna movement. So that's the Srimad Bhagavatam. And Caitlin, I'm sorry if I'm embarrassing you. She happens to have a degree in philosophy. So just this morning I happened to be looking at this book, because I never really looked at the inside of it. This book was taken from something else Prabhupada wrote. And the book put out by the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, which has the sole publishing rights on Bhaktivedanta Swami's writings. They published this book called Beyond Illusion and Doubt. And it happens to be some, not conversations, but he would engage in a sort of conversation that was actually being recorded with one disciple who also had a degree in philosophy. So that person would present the philosophy of different Western philosophers. And Prabhupada would give a Vedic, which is called Vedic, meaning Indian view of it, taken from the Vedic literatures, which are your oldest writings in the world, written in Sanskrit. Scholars try to put a date on it, but according to the tradition and the people, you can't put a date on it because it was passed down orally throughout the ages. And in the beginning of this age was written down 5,000 years ago, according to the people who live in the tradition. Written down by the Deva, the demigod named Ganesh. But of course, Western scholars try to say that the Vedas were written sometime, even they try to say, it varies from scholar to scholar, but many of them will say, written sometime before the Hebrews begun writing a story of Abraham, which they put dates on. Abraham was supposed to be such and such time. So before that, they claim the Vedas were written, beginning with the one Veda being divided into 4 Vedas. And, from there. So anyway, in the contents of this book, beginning with chapter 1, there's Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Origen, Augustine, Thomas Aquinas, Kierkegaard, Schopenhauer, Darwin, John Stuart Mill, Marx, on down to, Sigmund Freud, and however you pronounce it, Carl Jung is the final one of this particular book. So, give it that. You don't have to pay for it. There's a price tag on the front because we do sell these. So, yeah. Is that for the people of good karma? That's for the people of good karma. It's said that just by wearing the deity's garland, one can become free from disease. So we have, instead of giving everything to Caitlin, we're going to give something to Larry now. It's going to be blessings. Because this is an age where a lot of foul, fraudulent things going on. So I'm suspecting that people out of vengeance are trying to harm him. And they've made a lot of money from an accident due to loss of life. And although it was a complete accident, for whatever reason, the prosecutor has taken up a case with fraudulent evidence. And they're doing their best to try to, which appears to be, satisfy the vengeance of the person's family. So, in a small county, where you have a lot of people that know one another, and you have all of a sudden a bunch of money, and somebody wants something done, they can do it. simply with money. Just like everybody knows you can do it in India with money because, corruption is more on the surface. But don't think it's not underneath the surface in America. So how can you overcome this? He has an attorney. But if the judge rules against you, the judge rules against you. What can the attorney do but appeal while Larry goes to jail? So, we have to depend on the power of prayer. So Larry needs everyone's blessings and prayers because it's only by the power of Krishna in prayer. Just like the famous example of calling out Krishna's name in a time of being desperate, when you're being taken advantage of, when you're being cheated and completely humiliated and harmed, is of course the famous example of Draupadi. Born of a sacrificial fire, she's no ordinary human being, but she's the best amongst humans, and ladies at that. And to be humiliated in front of a bunch of chauvinistic, abusive men is, the greatest, infringement on someone's integrity. So Draupadi was put into such a situation. And her powerful husband, because she was a powerful woman, she had powerful husbands, but because it was a social, more accepted in our world today, although it's not accepted in the world today legally at all, but more accepted in the world today than it would have been back then. Because by the arrangement of Providence, there was something very unusual. She was such a qualified person. She was married to more than one of the most qualified men in the world. She was married to brothers, 5 brothers, who were all the most extremely qualified people in the world. Their mother was a great, pure-blooded princess, born of, warrior caste, coming from the dynasty of the moon god. But their father were powerful devas in the universe. It's not mythology, it's actually a reality. So Draupadi had powerful husbands who could not help her in the least, despite the agony of their mind. There wasn't a thing they could do without disrupting what was the perceived dharma or the perceived law of the land at that time. There were many elders there who were superior to them as far as casting judgment and giving direction. It'd be like going against the captain. Even, what's his name, tried to do that. The famous World War II hero, Douglas MacArthur. Was that his name, Douglas MacArthur, who said he would return to the Philippines?
Yes.
McCarthy. But he also said, he also went against Truman, the president, concerning what to do about Korea. So who was in power? The military government or the civilian government? So Truman had to do what he had to do, and he dismissed McCarthy, the famous World War II hero. He dismissed him from his post. So similarly, the Pandavas, the husbands of Draupadi, were also in such a situation. They had the power to deal with the insults that were being cast upon their wife. But they couldn't make a move without their superiors, giving them permission. And that wasn't coming. So what could Draupadi do? She was being completely humiliated in front of the assembly. So not knowing what else to do eventually, trying to defend herself, appealing to the superiors in the court. Eventually she turns to Krishna, who's not there, physically speaking, he's not there. He's back in Dwarka because Krishna is on the earth at this time. These are pastimes when God incarnates. Like an avatar, that's where the word comes from. It's a Vedic word meaning an incarnation. So Krishna has incarnated on earth performing pastimes because for him they're pastimes. It's like a movie show. For those of us in the bodily conception of life, it's not a movie because we feel the pleasure and the pain. Krishna feels the pleasure and the pain, but he's enlightened and he knows that it's all just temporary and that there's a real world beyond it and that we're all just playing a role in a pastime. So it's his pastime, though. But his pastime is very intricate and it involves infinite number of subplots because there's subplot to each individual's life. But there's also these big subplots of what's going on with the Pandavas and what's going on with Draupadi. They are his devotees. But now they're being insulted by people who are also very Vedic or Dharmic. They follow the laws of the scriptures. And they also, are theists. People who have faith in God. But they're at odds with Krishna's devotees. So, what does Draupadi do? Krishna's not there because he's on earth, it's his pastime, but he's not there. He's been with them. He's helped them in the past. He'll help them in the future get through thick and thin. But right now there's a situation going on that is extremely pitiful. And Draupadi has come to the point to where she doesn't know what else to do. And so she throws up her hands, as we've all have read about, and she just cries out to Krishna, 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 Krishna. And magically Krishna makes something happen. That the other side realizes that God himself is having special mercy on her. And we better desist from what we're doing. So, at this time, Valarioso needs that kind of assistance. There's nothing else that can help him other than Krishna. Because after all, his attorney is only a human. And he's up against other humans who might have the power to do what they want to do. Hopefully not, like Maharadwani said, heaven forbid. It's a sort of speculation, but it's a speculation based upon circumstantial evidence of the way he's being treated. So, please pray for him because anything can happen in a small county, to a foreigner who just happens to be Russian and speaks with a Russian accent. So, there's a lot of intolerance and discrimination, not only to African Americans and others, but also even to Caucasians who happen to be, what may be perceived as an enemy, even though he's an American citizen. So these things don't only go on in our country, they go on all over the world. Some places worse than others. Just ask the poor people. For a change, ask the Muslim people in Burma. Used to be Burma. It's how do you pronounce it?
Myanmar.
Myanmar. Just ask them. God, when I saw a picture yesterday of some of the people in refugee camps in Bangladesh, and then you get a refugee camp where? Not in Denmark. Not in France even. In Bangladesh. They have enough money, maybe as much as Louisiana. They can barely take care of their own population. But then you have 1 million people living in a refugee camp. And so I saw this picture where these kids, they're all just crowding, and it's not exactly fighting, but you know when there's like a crowd where there's an unorderly line of people where they're desperate for food. So you got all these kids with their bowl trying to get up to the front so they can get a bowl of food. So, I mean, you know, every country in the world, there's so many abuses, you know. That's what it means when we say it's an age of darkness. And this is amongst an intellectual class of people, you know. Do we live any better than the ants? I mean, the ants, they seem to get along better than we human beings get along. I mean, we make divisions, whether it be secular society or religious society. We make all these divisions and create all these, you know, animosities amongst one another. And then we harm one another in the name of sovereignty many times. So, you know, our Krishna consciousness movement is to create a spiritual revolution in the world, to try to bring about some peace and harmony. You know, we can talk about this and talk about that, but there's not even peace and harmony in the world. So Prabhupada used to say, how can it be peace and harmony when they don't even understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead? You know, they bow down to God 5 times a day. You know, they pray to God's only begotten Son. And still they go to war. And then you're a heretic if you even know something about God. It's like he's God, but you can't know anything about him or else you're blasphemous. But, you know, God's identity, why would God hide his identity? Why would he hide his identity? You know, if he's actually the best person, in India they use the phrase Purushottam, that's the name of the month, Purushottam month. It means the best person. He's the best person. He's not the worst person. He's not a bad guy, he's a good guy. Why would he hide his identity from us meager human beings who are trying to, you know, live a decent life? He doesn't hide his identity. It's always been there. It's we who have covered it over in the name of religion many times. I mean, some people won't even say his name. You can't even write the term God because he's so sacred. So that's fine, you know. That culture is there and that heritage is there. It's a wonderful heritage. You know, Christianity comes out of it. And Islam also comes out of it. But it's not the only tradition in the world. God's names have been sung since time immemorial in Vedic literature. On Friday, again, I'll sing that song like we sing every morning, Jai Radha Madhava. These are all names of Krishna that bring one into the pastimes that Krishna enacts in the spiritual world. So, just like you see people go into a sort of material ecstasy when they sing about their romance, or they sing about some hero, or they sing about this, they sing about that, they just really get into it. So, you know, gospel singers do the same thing. Or Mangalananda does the same thing with his song. So simply, when we just chant the names of Krishna, even though we may not even have any musical talent, one can still get completely absorbed in that ecstasy. That just like people feel material ecstasy, just humming a tune that moves them. So similarly, singing a song about Krishna, you know, actually can move a person who understands it, or even doesn't understand it, but just gets into it for its, even for just its musical stuff. That song is none different from Krishna and purifies the soul. So the descriptions in this Srimad Bhagavatam, this beautiful story of the personality of God, it purifies the soul. It purifies the soul. So it says, where do we go when this age of darkness is here? Well, Krishna has incarnated in this book. This is the book that when Krishna personally incarnated to create this movement, this is the book he taught his disciples and people. This Srimad Bhagavatam, of which the Bhagavad Gita is like an elementary foundation of. The Gita is the foundation of this book. Gita is more well known in the world. And it's understood amongst most people in the world, understand it to be like the Bible of India, the Bhagavad Gita, the Song of God. But the Srimad Bhagavatam is the story of God and his devotees. So that's where we need to take shelter. So I'll end here. So everybody, please give Larry blessings and prayers, because he needs